And thank you. This is David Gruen speaking. I'm calling to order the meeting of the Finance Committee, the Forsyth County Finance Committee on Thursday, September 24th, 2020 at 11 a.m. And we'll start off with adoption of the agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda or a motion to adopt it as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. I'll switch my view over to the camera. All in favor, indicate by saying aye, and you can raise either hand you want. Thank you.
Aye.
And it's a unanimous vote of 4-0. Let me flip back to the agenda. Next is adoption of the minutes, which were at the bottom of the agenda file that was sent out for the last Forsyth County Finance Committee meeting on September 10th. Give you a moment if you want to scan those, or we'll take a motion to adopt when you're ready.
So moved.
Second.
Your motion and a second. Again, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye, I hear you and see the hands. And I saw Doug too. All right, we're good. Okay, it's 5-0 then, I should say, with all 5 votes with Doug sitting in that position. All right, on to part 4 of the agenda, items for consideration and discussion. We always allow for an introduction by the county manager spot. Doug, do you want to introduce anything at this point?
I don't. I think we covered as much as we could at the last meeting, and we're ready to get the rest of it completed today. Thanks for everybody's input and cooperation. It's really all I have, Dave.
Okay. With that, I'll move on briefly to B and C, and then we will move on through the remainder of this budget, hopefully. As far as economic and general fund updates are concerned, I have one more piece of data that's come in since our last meeting, and that is the Taft collections for August, reflecting auto sales of those registered in Forsyth County. August did go down from July by 10.6%. However, if I take that August amount and project it out for a full 12 months, that still would put us next year well ahead of the amount that we have in this proposed budget for Taft collections. So I'm still confident we were budgeted at a good level since we had already reduced that as well as the sales tax. That's the main piece of economic information I have for Commissioner Mills in particular, but everyone. I've not seen any other big reductions come down from the state anywhere, but we're constantly keeping an eye on that. And of course, we have gotten a large distribution of the CARES fund, which helps our cash balance in the general fund and fire fund as well. So that has helped put us in good position going into next year and for the balance of this year, for that matter.
I keep hearing that the next round of CARES is coming in.
Yeah, we're watching for, supposedly the governor's office is about ready to release their notice, maybe today or tomorrow. So we're keeping an eye on that. We're watching our portal that we get the funding through and maybe see if announcement comes through that. So we want the chair, her office, to see if that next notice comes in today or tomorrow.
Dave, this is Becky. I checked the portal after we spoke today, and it has not been announced yet.
Not there. Okay.
Not there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we'll still see the letter comes in.
I was on a board of managers thing with ACCG yesterday, and they thought it would come in the next day or two.
Okay. Very good. So we're scanning the horizon for that, and we'll look for that to come in. We're ready with the expenditures to claim for that already, and we'll come to the board if there's additional funding available to expand the small business grants or whatever other area the board is interested in providing any funding. So,
isn't this one supposed to be bigger?
It could be, depending how they do it. The last thing we were told was there would be a second and a third. We don't know if that's going to happen or not. The second one was going to be 35% of the total. The first one we received was 30%. So if you extrapolate that out, we would get as much as maybe $14.5 million. So we will be ready to jump on that and bring it to the board. All right. Any other questions about that or the economics? If not, I'll move on to C, and I'll give the committee an update on where we stand with this general fund proposed budget. We started out in the last meeting with everything updated. We started out with about $2,646,000 available to recommend funding for new items. After the actions taken in the last meeting for recommendations and for cuts or things that were not recommended, We are now down at 1,253,428 available in the proposed budget. And what we have left for consideration today is just under 735,000. So what that means is that with the things that were not funded out of this, we are now on the positive side, if you will. And that doesn't mean we should or shouldn't fund each item. Each item will be considered on its own merits. But at this point, available funding should not be an issue for anything else that the committee wants to recommend for funding to the full board for next year. Any other questions on that, or are we ready to get back onto the items on the agenda? Hearing none, and of course the committee is always welcome to go back and ask a question or anything at any time. Back onto the agenda, where we had stopped last meeting was with a request from Indigent Defense, and that was a position for an attorney to handle the accountability court cases. And I'll stop there. I'll let Connie's on, so I'll let Connie explain this request and how it came about.
Thank you, Dave. As y'all know, the county currently the court system has 3 accountability courts. We have drug court, DUI court, and our mental health court, which is our care court program. The drug court has been in place over 10 years now. And what I currently do is provide one of my indigent defense panel attorneys for each of the courts. And our courts have grown so much, and the judges have asked me to consider having one attorney that is possibly on staff that would be a county employee that could specialize and handle all of the accountability courts. So they've asked that I do that. So I have put in the request. Commissioner Mills, I know you're very familiar with our accountability courts and what a success that they have had. And so I think that if we had a full-time attorney that could concentrate on all of the accountability courts and specialize in the accountability courts, that it would be very viable for those programs and for the participants in those programs. Instead of having a panel attorney off of my indigent defense panel handling each court, where I've got 3 attorneys that are concentrating on the courts, where I could have one attorney that could concentrate on each of the courts and specialize in accountability courts. They could attend all the trainings, could handle all of the participants in all of the courts, and again, just become a specialized attorney for those. And the judges have also inquired, and they've asked that we look at doing that also, to have one attorney that can handle all of the courts.
Connie, let me add, if I may, because there's one other important number we needed to add here that we did not see before to see the whole picture. But I asked Connie to go back and look at her budget, and since we are already providing these services to the courts through the contracted attorneys, what this means is if action was taken by the board, we would cut $60,000 in contracted attorney fees. So the net increase against the $97,857 you see requested on the new items list, the net increase to the general fund would actually be $37,857. Most of that difference is really the benefits, I guess, that a position would get. But so that's the difference. Of the increase is $37,000, not $97,000.
I'm fine with that. I mean, I think the continuity with the person might help the success of the person with the court.
Yeah, me too. I'm good with it.
All right. If there's any other comments following our pattern of the last meeting, I'll take one of those as a motion in a second to recommend funding that. Commissioner Mills?
So moved.
So moved. And Commissioner Brown, second? All right. Committee members all in favor in recommending that for funding to the board, signify by saying aye and raising a hand. Aye. Is that all 5 that I see? I'm not seeing Commissioner Cooper. I don't see Commissioner Cooper. All right, she stepped away for a moment. All right, for the moment, that's a 4-0 vote with, I think, Commissioner Cooper stepping out of the room from what I see in the picture.
It's a majority.
Okay, let me go to the next item and see if she steps back. Okay, the next item was in finance, which was, let me go back and look at the new item list so I describe it correctly. It's a grant administrator position for a total of $85,403. And that would be, we said before, that would be less any fees that we could charge for administrative costs to any grants that we're administering. With that, I think Becky's on, if you want to start introducing that item.
Yes, and this is a good problem to have. Since we introduced the grant coordinator position about 2.5 years ago, we have successfully been awarded 6 competitive grants for about $7.5 million. And they're across various departments, fire, parks and rec, engineering, the sheriff's office. And with those awards come additional grant compliance, grant management responsibilities. And although they're all different, it doesn't really depend on the dollar amount. For example, the mental health grant it's a collaborative grant, which it and the Healthiest Cities and Counties are both collaborative grants. So there's a lot of time spent in meetings with the technical advisors, with the grantors, and within the county itself. So what I'm asking is to have an additional resource added that can expand the grant opportunities that would support the community, support the departments, help them become grant ready, do research and development, respond to the needs of the Board of Commissioners, and of course, write the grants. I know our title today is grant coordinator, but for all intents and purposes, we write the grants and we reach out to the departments for their technical input to the grants. So with that responsibility, the grant coordinator would be responsible for onboarding all new grant awards. This person would manage the compliance calendar, all the special conditions, make sure that we respond to any grantor audits. We just had the victim witness VOCA grant for DA. We had a grantor audit. And so, and then assist the administrator in research. And so it's just, it just helps us to maintain the framework that we operate within and make sure that we don't open up any gaps of risk by by being resource constrained on all of the requirements that come along with the grant process. And now that we've had all of this CARES Act funding coming our way, that's another dimension of responsibility and compliance that we weren't even aware of 6 months ago. So
I don't disagree. I do think that there is, and we were hoping, I remember when I was adamant with Doug that we hire the first, that we knew that if it grew the way it should, that there would be another that would have to be hired. Staying in compliance is key, but that we would, I've got no doubt we miss grant opportunities by not knowing the grants are out there.
Mm-hmm.
I think researching, I just helped Karen write about the GOSP grant this morning, and how being in the legislative or policy council update and hearing about the GOSP grant in that class, and realizing that Eagles Beak was going to be a perfect fit for it, and how timing is everything. Hearing about those grant opportunities and being the first in, where there was 100 applications, next year there'll probably be 1,000. It's just critical. Timing is everything in getting, and
networking and knowing those associations that you are involved in that you support us with. And, we just need to be prepared to respond to those things. And I think we've responded very quickly and effectively on things that come through your channel as a commissioner.
Yeah, I think y'all being out in the community has helped us get grants tremendously.
Yeah.
And us being able to put down all those mental health things and all those other things, and being on the phone with NACO and those other things have helped us be ahead of other counties for sure.
Yeah. Well, we want to keep moving forward, but at the same time, as the director, I'm concerned that we may have gaps that we're not able to, it's like the tyranny of the urgent versus the important. We have to maintain that control framework in making sure that we do stay in compliance with the grants.
And hopefully we'll be able to show that doing this, will get us more grants as well, that it pays, it more than pays for itself.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I'll make a motion that we hire this position as presented.
Second.
Hearing a motion and a second. All in favor? Any further discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor signify by saying aye, raising your hand. And the host of the meeting, I cannot see all the, maybe if we take any, I can't see everyone. There we go. Commissioner Cooper's there. Thank you. And it's a 5-0 vote. Okay, I can see everyone now.
Thank you very much. And Commissioner Mills, we appreciate your support.
Yes, ma'am. I think y'all are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next item is pre-trial services position. And let me get up the description of that one. This is for a pretrial release officer, total amount of funding, $78,752. And who do we have that's going to address that? Is that Robin or do we have Jamie on? Okay, Robin.
Trying to get the video started.
Who's keeping a running tab? What are we down to?
All right, let me go back and see. Sandra we had a live sheet where every number we drop into it updates it, and I haven't kept up with it, but I know staff is. Okay. When you're ready, Sandra or Becky, if you have a number, give it to us. But
I feel like we're on a game show.
Closest without going over.
Yeah, Sandra just sent the update to me, and after the last approval, we now have available $1,070,168.
Oh, I thought we started with 735.
Oh no, that was, I'm sorry. That was the amount of requests that were pending. We start with $1,253,000 available.
Oh, well, then we don't even have to ask. Okay.
Yeah, no, we're good. We're okay. Funding is not an issue for the general fund at this point.
All right.
Thank you. All right. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Robin.
Okay. Well, this is a straightforward request. I'm going to try to share my screen here. If I can share the screen, if whoever else is sharing the screen would stop for a moment. Yeah.
Go.
Yay. It's not working. Okay.
Yeah, there it is.
There we go. Since 2017, we have had a 65% increase in the number of felony offenders our pretrial services organization is supervising. If you look at misdemeanors, we have increased that by 123% since 2017. A lot of this has to do with bail reform and the solicitor not wanting misdemeanor offenders who have money to remain in jail. We have 17, 20 days when they could be out on pretrial release. Right now, we've got 1,153 offenders that we expect by the end of the year, which means that each of our 3 officers, which includes our directors that usually in other programs don't have a caseload, will be supervising 384 offenders. The national recommendation is that each pretrial service officer only supervise 150 offenders. And so with the additional, if approved, pretrial services officer, we will be down to supervising 288, which is still high. But if you look at some of the other areas like the drug test performed since 2017, this is in addition to the supervision, we've increased that by 129%. So the pretrial services office is just overloaded right now and needs some help with an additional officer.
Do the fines help pay for this at all?
We don't have a cost for being in pretrial. And that is something that most pretrial services offices across the country do not do.
Other questions or comments?
And so, Robin, you're saying that the reform is to, I mean, and I agree with the reform, is to keep these people working and
Right.
not in jail. I mean, I think that's a good
What
thing.
would happen, especially with misdemeanors, is that they would be in jail, be given a bond and unable to pay for that bond, which meant they remained in jail, which costs money, jail bed days. And as a result, they would lose their job. Often, they're unable to pay their rent. And if they had child support, they would be unable to pay that. So having them out of jail and under the supervision of these pretrial officers that ensure that they, if they don't have a job, that they're looking for a job. If they need to go to, NAAA, they're doing that to be able to do whatever is necessary to reduce criminality and to ensure that they dispose of their case.
I mean, I don't have a problem with hiring as long as, that we are making sure that these people are getting checked up on and they are having accountability.
Right. The success rate for felonies, which is kind of conventional wisdom upside down, is about at 98, 97%. Misdemeanors is around 92%, which is pretty good. In other organizations, it's not unusual for the success rate to be about 80%, and that's considered good for whatever that jurisdiction is.
And what's the cost of this?
Don't have them in front of me.
See, 78,752.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have motion from Commissioner Mills, second from Commissioner Brown. Any other discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And if I get back my full screen, do I hear everyone? I don't see everyone. I'll go with a 5-0 on that.
Robin, if the world became a better place, this would be decreased. I mean, you would be prepared to come back and one day and reduce this?
Sure, absolutely.
I mean,
there's many things that can happen. Not that we're planning anytime soon, but a lot of metro areas will, on misdemeanors, just give citations and not book them into jail.
yeah.
So, there's a lot of things at play, and especially with bail reform being big right now, there are many things that can still happen. But to answer your question, of course, if that goes
down, that's a very political. The bail bondsmen have quite they are very active lobbyists. I know that.
Right. Especially in this state.
Yeah.
We're starting to see states like Kentucky and other ones that have done away with the whole bail bond system. And they actually do better as far as defendants showing up for court.
Have you seen, since we started doing, when we went out to bid and started doing the weekends and at night, has that improved?
Now that's pre-trial diversion. that has improved a lot, just the accessibility of being able to go to your probation officer after 5 or on Saturdays. Because remember, before it was very limited hours.
Oh, yeah.
For somebody working, it's just impossible almost to come in the middle of the day and keep your job.
I thought that would be a huge improvement for people trying to.
Robin, what are all those bail bondsmen doing now for a living if they're not doing that racket?
You know, the good thing about misdemeanors is that there's not a lot of money for the bail bondsman. We're in a very conservative jurisdiction, so they are still getting a lot of felony offenders. If you go to a place like Fulton, you know, that's a big hit. If you start funneling your felonies to pretrial services, the bail bondsmen start to feel it, and that's when you start getting letters and a lot of kickback from them. But misdemeanors, their bonds are going to be lower, so it doesn't represent a lot of lost income for the bail bondsman. Not that they're going to like it, but still, it's not a big financial hit for them.
Yeah, I wasn't really concerned. I just
right.
I just think that sometimes that the more of those you have, it's just kind of an element, you know. You see. So. Yes, it's always a variable in these decisions.
Dennis, they own pawn shops now.
Yeah, how did you read my mind, Molly? That's exactly what I was saying.
Yeah.
And vape shops.
Yeah.
Okay, with the vape shops, we ready to move on to the next item? All right, thank you, Robin.
Thank you.
Committee. Next item on the agenda is for business licenses. This is actually the last full-time position request here. We'll return to facilities for the final resolution of what was pending there. This request is for an administrative specialist, total amount of $68,672. We did increase the board took action on increasing the fees going into the department, which helps with the funding of that function, funds almost all the function. And with that, I think Amy is on to describe how this position will help with their increasing workload. I think, got Amy, if she's got her connection.
Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Okay, so thank you for this opportunity. Yes, Dave is correct. Business License is requesting a full-time position for an administrative specialist. As you may remember, board members, that you voted in August to let us increase the administrative fee that hasn't been changed in 25 years. That administrative fee is going from $25 to $50 for the 2021 tax year. That will affect new businesses only and renewal businesses. So let me give you an idea. Typically in 2018, we took in $180,000 in administrative fees. In 2019, we took in $183,000. To date this year, we're over $122,000. So it basically would double that. So it'd be over $366,000. So with that, that's a good start, and it will cover the increase to the department. We also have a zoning inspector. I know that you may or may not be aware. The zoning inspector was added last year. It's been an excellent addition to the department. It has increased our customer service levels and also has brought in a lot of extra revenue for the department, to the tune of like $120,000 last year of money that we had been able to collect, whether the business was just not in compliance, we had a balance due, or there were businesses in the community that did not have a business license or had been behind in their taxes. This year, it's a little bit different. Right now, the Q1, we had about $32,000. Obviously, in light of COVID, we weren't going out there asking people for money. We were basically, just offering any customer service, trying to get our business licensing off hold so that when the next tax year did occur, that they wouldn't have any penalties. But we are ramping back up. I've talked to my zoning inspector, and he gets about 2 to 3 businesses that are non-compliant per week. And it could be they've been non-compliant for several years. Some of the fees are anywhere from $1,700 for one business, all the way down to $400. So we are experiencing an uptake in business license applications, believe it or not, as well as alcohol applications. Our increase on business license is about 6.4%, and then our increase to alcohol is about 10% if you take the last couple years. And we have other additional efficiencies that we are going to put into effect for my department that will save more money for the department. That would be digital record retention. That's something that we're looking at, and I'm going to bring that resolution to the board, and that'll save staff time, office supplies, a whole host storage fees. We're always looking at how we can be more efficient and offer better service level. So with that, that's pretty much all I have. I'm here for any questions that you may have.
Amy, since you mentioned the inspector, let me just add a particular interest, I think to Commissioner Brown as well. Instead of a big old F-150 truck going out there and doing these inspections, her department is the recipient of a pilot program, one of our 2 new electric vehicles. And that's what our inspector is going out in is in the e-car. And so they're kind of glad to receive that, and he's out there using it.
Do they like it?
Amy, are you riding a roller coaster as you're talking on your microphone? It seemed like you would get close to the mic and we could hear you, then you'd go far away and close.
I'm having trouble with my laptop. Sorry about that. And I get too close and then they said my face is too big. So maybe I should just talk really close and then put myself my video off. But I don't know. I've talked to IT. I'm having issues with my laptop. I'm very sorry.
No, I could hear you. It would just go, you could hear you really good. And then it was like, no, and then good. And then no. And
so Amy and Dave, have you received any feedback or Doug or anybody from the public on the electric vehicles, either positive or negative?
Go ahead, Amy.
I haven't received any. I would like to tell you that I am super excited. I was really surprised and really, really pleased that we received that. I think it can only be positive for us. We're out there. It's only good for the county and for my department, and it's another cost savings for me for the budget. So I like it.
Good.
Yeah, Commissioner, it's a little bit early for that. We actually just recently were able to get those cars out on the road. So we're looking for feedback from staff as soon as they have them out there for a while.
Sure. I saw an article this morning where California, by the year 2035, they're outlawing gasoline vehicles.
Wow.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, we may not get feedback from the public that we're citing for not having a business license. They may not care what we're driving, but other than that, it's out there with the logo for the county is on it. So
good.
All right. Any questions for Amy in this position, or what's the pleasure of the committee concerning funding it?
Move we approve it.
second.
Motion from Commissioner Brown, second from Commissioner Cooper. And if we're ready to vote, any other comments? All in favor, signify by saying aye and showing me a hand on the camera there. Make sure I got everyone up top here. There we go. There's Commissioner Cooper. I have to go back and forth between 2 screens. Thank you very much. That was passed with a 5-0 recommendation for the board.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. All right. Next item on the agenda is Chamber of Commerce, and this is addressing a request increase in funding for economic development of, I believe it was $45,000. And I think I saw James is on the call, James McCoy from the Chamber.
Good morning.
Oh, I hear the voice.
Well, first of all, and I'm glad Amy's still on the line. I wanted to start by saying thank you, Amy, to her and her team. In addition to all the great work that Dave and Becky and the Finance Committee, our Finance Department did on the CARES grant for small business program that hopefully we're going to revisit for phase 2. Amy and her department really helped us in getting the word out to a lot of those folks, and I just have not had a chance to say thank you to her, so thank you for that. And I was glad to hear that business licenses are in fact up, because that's what we're seeing too. So commissioners, the summary of the request is that as you may recall, we are going into really year 3 of the implementation of the county's strategic plan for economic development. The plan itself, of course, we're having now to really take a close look at as we're moving forward, because COVID-19 has changed the economy enormously and will continue to. But as we are doing that, we are also still, of course, we're not just dropping what we do to look at the plan and redo it. We're aggressively pursuing the tactics that we know are generating interest in the community from our channels. And we've got some great evidence of that. We've had some great success with that. One of the aspects of the plan that is to come next that has really, to be candid, we should have started about mid-year last year, but financially we could not make that happen, that we are prioritizing this year is an aggressive public relations campaign that would require some additional funding to what we have previously been doing and will continue to do in economic development. And that is not really advertising. What that really means is that we are targeting decision makers in some of the largest commercial investment firms around the country and really the world, but particularly around the country. And specifically what we're trying to do is use public relations to get the attention of folks that are making decisions about where to make investments for new manufacturing space, new business development space, new office buildings, industrial parks, so that we are absolutely on their radar screen. If you look at communities that have been successful at doing this, Frisco, Texas, McKinney, Texas, communities around Denver, and the public relations efforts by itself have really gained that attention and gets us entree to be able to talk about the availability of space so that we can talk about the product. We know on a local and regional level that process works. We're just trying to now bump that up to a national and international level. We are asking the county to invest an additional $45,000. We're also asking the chamber from private investment to increase theirs at least by $63,000. We have a private fundraising goal increase total of 100, but $63,000 would be used for economic development for that purpose. Because of course we do use private dollars to fund economic development as well. It's not just the public investment. So this would leverage private money as well. It certainly makes our argument a lot easier in talking to private investors that our largest partner in economic development, the county, is making that investment as well. Certainly we can chat about really any aspect of that you'd like, but I think when you look at some of the projects that have been coming to fruition over the last year, Dexter's probably the most notable example. We were not on Dexter's, Forsyth County was not on Dexter's radar anywhere, but really through direct conversation between our economic development department, bringing them on site, letting them become aware of the community and what investment capability there was. They now, of course, have several 100,000 square feet of space that we're now marketing and helping them fill. So, which in turn drives further investment. So I'm hopeful that we will be able to do this year. I think actually the timing is excellent to be able to roll this out, because there's a lot of communities, I will tell you, that have just frozen solid, and we have an opportunity to really get engaged in that conversation.
James, when are you going to land that next Tesla plant out here?
I would love to have Tesla. Although, if you will ask the communities, Austin, Texas, namely one of them, they're also very expensive.
Yeah. What about the Trader Joe's? Have you heard any more from that?
So we are working with a some commercial space in the community and leadership of that space, in working directly with Trader Joe's. I think we've put together the best argument we possibly can for that investment. As you all may recall, just before the pandemic, we were engaged in really getting the community in communicating to Trader Joe's via social media and other outlets. And it has clearly made a difference. And I don't know that this conversation would have been going on without some of that public engagement and public effort. Retail, of course, is very different than other industries, but we are working directly. I know the county has sent at least one, and I think a second letter, as has the chamber and the development authority, expressing support and help where we can.
I know it came up yesterday, James, but I would like to see the CIDs and you guys be able to provide more input, like on some of the planning, just as an input. As we're going to get more and more CIDs, I think with their added millage, it's important that we get their input to some of these nodes and character areas and things. And I think it makes it more synergistic if everybody's working together on that.
And I appreciate that, Commissioner, and you're right. I mean, and by the way, I think it's because it's public information, but I don't think they've made an announcement. But the South Forsyth CID just hired their first executive director, a guy named John Antoine, who's got great experience in CID leadership. So it's going from a volunteer board of directors to now having someone that, and we have a relationship with them, of course, and they won't be using office space at the chamber, but they'll be using our boardroom space and other space, and I'll be helping him get up and running. But you're right, Commissioner. I suspect we will see at least 2 of those on the horizon. I know I've talked to commissioners, different commissioners, about other tools in the toolbox. And those are, economic development ends up being one of those initiatives. Like a lot of initiatives, you end up building the plane as you fly it. So, we're out there trying to market the community for what we call product development, the building of office space, manufacturing space, flex space. At the same time, we're also marketing the community through commercial realtors and statewide project managers and trade associations to the end users who will be using that space. And on top of all of that, building the tools to help both of those entities be able to do what they need to do to create the investment that they need to create. So there has been an enormous amount of activity in terms of building out that process and that infrastructure since really 2017, late 2016, when we really first started this conversation in earnest. But you're right. I mean, and I will tell you, I realize there are a lot of people who have a lot of different views, but my looking at other communities and looking here, this is a highly cooperative environment. I mean, I have great conversations with commissioners. There have been a number of initiatives I could point to, even very recently, that great progress has been made. And it wouldn't be, and really it just happens out of conversations. It's not because anybody's got a gun to somebody's head or anything along those lines.
Yeah.
James, are you looking at this as a one-time increase, a one-time of $45,000, taking up the 2021 budget to $495 from last year, $450? I'm just trying to make sure I got the numbers correct.
So, Commissioner, what we are seeing is that this would allow us to have access to a lot of channels that we do not have access to. And so my understanding from those conversations is once you have access, those costs do come down because really you're just maintaining access, you're just maintaining relationships, and that is a very different thing than getting entree at the beginning. And a very direct example of this is there are a number of site selection firms. They now call themselves EY, but Ernst & Young, what is left of Ernst & Young as EY, is the world's largest site selection company for corporate entities. They host several meetings a year. It is incredibly challenging to get an invitation to one of those meetings. What this helps us do is work with a former member of their firm who would invite us to that meeting to get us in front of those site selectors to be able to have that conversation. I do not like the way that particular game is played, but we don't write the rules on that. That's just how that game is played. But once those relationships are established, like everything, once those relationships are established, then it's much, much easier, and the cost of that comes way down in future years.
Okay, so you're seeing this 45,000 decreasing from 2021
Yes.
to 2022. Maybe even going away, depending on how successful it is.
That's correct, Commissioner. And I wish I could tell you what that decrease number would be, but really, until we know how successful that really is going to be, I mean, all of the evidence points to, because these other tactics that are similar on a local level have been successful, that this should be successful. Assuming that it is successful, we know it will decrease. I can't tell you off the top of my head by how much.
Any other comments from the committee? Any recommendations from the committee concerning funding? This is funding only, doesn't change the contract.
I'd move that we approve the request as brief there.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, Commissioner Brown. I think I hear Commissioner Cooper in a second. Recommendation to recommend to the board the increase in funding for this area by 45,000. Any other comments? If not, ready for a vote on. I see Commissioner Brown's ready for a signal by saying aye and raising the hand.
Aye.
All right, very good. I think we have everyone voting on that. 5-0. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, back on our agenda to finish up the remaining items in the general fund. The next two are, I think, reclass request. This just addresses the funding for reclassification. The request still will have to go through the process and personnel services to see what is actually recommended if the funding is approved. First one is for communications department. And I believe we know we have Karen available. And this one was for, let me bring up the details. It's on the screen. This was to consider reclassification of the video production specialist to a manager position in the total amount of funding of $10,918. Karen, you want to add any comments to that?
Just that is the maximum. The position has not been graded yet. We've worked to rewrite the job description, but it has not gone through the process in personnel services, as was mentioned, so that would be the maximum. I do want to mention that the individual in this particular position has been there for about 5 years, and over the past 2.5 years or so has really taken on a leadership in strategic planning for our video production, worked on strategic partnerships with the chamber, the libraries, the schools to help get original programming on TV Forsyth, as well as our PSAs and other information that we get out to the community through all of our various video outlets. And this is a recognition of the fact that it has moved from a specialist to more of a management position. But as mentioned, that will be dependent upon how the position actually gets graded through personnel services. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Karen, this is Doug. Are there any direct reports for this new position or upgraded position?
There are not. This would be a management of processes, not of personnel.
Okay.
And that is why we don't know that it'll make it to that level or not.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the committee?
Well, just one comment. I think as moving forward, we're going to have more and more engagement by the communications department on every issue, like Cindy was, whether it's wastewater treatment or the dumps or whatever, it's always getting more and more sensitive. So, keeping ahead of that with a world-class team, I think is important. So I think I'd be for that. We're just going to be expecting more and more of you guys, Karen. So
I think the key to that is staying ahead, though. We just can't be days late. By the time it explodes on Facebook, if our reaction time 2 or 3 days later, we're too behind. We've got to be able to get it out quicker. That's the key.
We do monitor social media. It's challenging, as you mentioned. It moves very, very fast. And so we appreciate any time someone says, I saw this, I heard this, we need to address this. We address things as quickly as we can with our approval processes. We are working to speed those up. I'll be honest, in 35 years in communications, the last 4 have probably been some of the most challenging because of social media. But that's why we hired an administrative specialist last year to help us monitor some of that. And I think over the past year or so, we've done a better job of getting ahead of some of these items.
Yeah, it's almost like when we have a meeting, especially you can almost see how like the newspapers are, which they're even asking for donations now. I mean, literally, they're out asking for donations online, which is shocking. But that's the world we're in. But they have become so tabloid-like, and that's all of them, even from the local all the way up, that you see them now. It used to be like on zonings that they didn't put out zonings until they got to the time of the zoning. But now when somebody comes and submits an application, they submit it as it's a zoning. And so it's put out online everywhere, even before staff makes a recommendation whether to approve, it's out there as the zoning. And
Cindy, go ahead.
We start getting yelled at before we even know the application's even out there.
Well, let me just add to that. Down here, the other day when that 56 acres, the for sale sign went up, and we were already getting bombarded with things about what was going to happen there. And
you need to buy that as a park. You need to purchase that as a park.
Yeah,
lobbied about buying it as a park. And
where's my checkbook? Yeah.
What are they talking about?
Yeah. I mean, the sale sign, there was nothing even submitted to the county. It was like, okay, what are you guys going to do? And we're like, well, let's back up. So we had a town hall meeting, but that just shows how people are, they don't even wait for anything to come before the county. It's already in the.
Y'all had a town hall meeting on a property that was for sale?
No. This was as part of the town hall that was already scheduled for Grand Cascade. That issue came up and we were able to discuss it and explain the process to them. But we wouldn't have one just for that, I promise.
But it is crazy. And I mean, I have had people I have went on and looked at things, and I mean, we're already getting bashed on a project, on something that hadn't even come up yet. So I feel for you. It is hard to know when do you, that's why when there's good news about a park approval or a grant or anything, I like to be the ones to tell it even ahead of a newspaper, because it is something that's happy. If we can get out in front and tell the good news, I'm all for it.
Yes, ma'am. I totally agree.
Okay. Any other comments? Any recommendations on funding from the committee to the full board? Do we hear any recommendations or motion for recommendation?
My only thought on this is that, and I know that this has been a strange year because of us being in influx about county manager and all, but in the future, and I'm just basing this on my time here in office, I like the way Doug used to do it. And when we hire a new county manager, we need this to be on our to-do list. A lot of these things need to be worked out and rehashed and done before it gets to the board. You know, new jobs, new placements. I just think that some of these things are, you know, I can just attest to the way Doug used to do it with, you know, being in touch with each department and having that communication with HR and with Dave and knowing, you know.
Weren't we discussing that in our retreat, you know, so maybe we can move on this one.
Well, and we need to have that. I mean, we just need to.
Yeah.
I agree. We're making approvals by department that honestly, I just think that it's like a shot in the dark and we're saying it and we're having to vote yes when really, I don't know that we're in a position to know if that's the right thing or not.
Well, I think from my standpoint, Cindy, we rely as much as possible on the people in charge, and if they, you know, until, you know, somebody's proved otherwise, it's good to question, and it's good having Doug's insight here. But yeah, I agree that the new county manager is going to have a good handle on that to advise us. But I think this is one area for that amount of money, it's probably good to go ahead and then we can adjust if we need to. I like what you like to ask the Ms. Rooks there about, would you willing to take this back if it gets better? That's a good question for all of them, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, you look at communications and it's grown. I mean, if you look at it in that was a department when Jody was here, it was much, much smaller and it's grown exponentially. I mean, like if you look at the budget and how it's just exploded, I mean, the quality, and it's putting out a lot more stuff, but I mean, it'd be interesting, you know, to have an evaluation of it.
Sure.
Commissioner Mills, I think, this is Doug, I think what you can do in the future is once all of this with COVID passes, hopefully sooner than later, then there will be a time in the future where you can conduct, like we did years ago, a staff analysis and look at each department, look at the hours worked, the downtime, and just evaluate like we did in 07, 08, 09, and that was what I called right sizing. So if things change dramatically during the next year or two, then I would think that the commission or the county manager at the time would recommend that we look at that again, because when those things change, it could very well change the amount of staff or the number of staff we need. So I agree with you 100%, but it would need to be looked at really closely when things change.
Well, Doug, put a note on that we do discuss this at the retreat in the looking at the whole county manager thing.
Okay.
There's a way that we assess departments and be able to look at that the output of the department is in some way we're looking at, you know, that they're measuring that there is a measurement of some. You know, I get frustrated when we don't have, especially during the pandemic, and we had a lot of people in the office, you know, that we had no one there to run the equipment, you know, that knew how to run the equipment from communications. I mean, you know, that we were in the large conference room and no one was there to run any equipment in the large conference room.
Yes,
we
ma'am.
heard your concern, ma'am, and there is someone from communications in the office every day. A lot of times there's 2 or 3 of us, so we make sure that there's someone there every day to assist.
And I appreciate that since then.
Well, I'll
Thank
move.
you for letting us know.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll move that we approve the $10,142 for the reclassification as brief.
You have a
Second.
motion? I hear and see a second. I'll take a second from Commissioner Mills, I guess, and go ahead and call the vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All right. It's a 5-0 vote. None opposed.
Thank
Thank you,
you very
Karen.
much.
Next item on the agenda, before we go back to public facilities, is personnel services. And that's one, let me see here. I believe that's 2. Get to the right place. Yeah, 2 reclasses, one for $2,375 and one for $793. And I know Pat is on if you want to briefly touch on those 2.
Yes, commissioners. This is in alignment with our departmental staff development. And the way that we plan and process the development of staff is that we put a strong emphasis on cross-training and first mastering the specific duties of that position, but also then cross-training and serving as secondary backup for other functions within our department. And typically that is a 2-year process. And both of these reclassifications are on that 2-year track. That is why one is for 3rd quarter and one is for 4th quarter. I will tell you that the cross-training and various duties have escalated tremendously with the COVID-19 in our department. But nonetheless, we know that, and we hope, let me put it that way, we hope that it'll start leveling off in 2021. And that's not what this is based upon. This is based upon the regular growth of that individual in their position. And these 2, one is for recruiting, and specifically in recruiting, we have done a great deal of increased in sophistication in our onboarding and our electronic services, and that skill level of managing all that is has been, this person has done an excellent job in running with this and bringing up new efficiencies into the process. And the other is our personnel services assistant, who we're continuing providing new and additional duties, and really that individual has expanded tremendously. As mentioned, they're really ready earlier in 2021, but we want to stick to the 2-year and see how all of that levels out. So that's our request for the 2 reclassifications for a total of approximately $3,200.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second, Commissioner Mills, second from Commissioner Brown. Any other discussion? Hearing not, seeing hands raised, signify by saying aye or raising the hand.
Aye.
It's a 5-0 vote. Thank you all. Now, lastly, in the general fund, if we
Thank
circle.
you.
Thank you, Pat. If we circle back to public facilities for the items we left open that were pending, the way I understand it here, because we've had some changes, we had at the time 3 new requested positions and 6 upgrades, which for a total of just over $345,000. At this point,
Dave,
it looks
I'll take this.
okay, because a couple of those were removed, right? Then
Yeah,
you'll handle the 3rd one.
I think, Dan, are you on the line as well?
Yeah, I'm on the line, Doug.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let me go through this pretty quickly, Dave, and I'll take the first part under new current service level items. I talked extensively with Dan and Garen and Pat Carson, and even though we're going to be looking at outsourcing, potentially outsourcing some of the HVAC and groundskeeping services, the reclasses make perfect sense for the organization and the department he has today. So I'm perfectly fine with those reclasses, and of course the various repair and maintenance requests from the departments for $299,700. Those have been reviewed as well, and I'm perfectly fine with approving or recommending that the Finance Committee approve those. However, if you step down to the new revised service level items, that's where the changes come in. We can do it one of two ways. We can say very simply that we're going to eliminate or not fund those three positions. One is an electrician, one is an HVAC technician, again, because we're going to maybe in the future outsource some of those services. And the third one is the ADA coordinator. What we've done is, or what I'd recommend to the committee is that we not fund the electrician one. However, we fund electrician one using funds that are currently budgeted in public facilities and convert a position, I think it's a groundskeeping position, to the electrician one position. That takes care of his need. And in talking to Dan and Garen, I think that was the number one need in addition to the ADA coordinator. So however you want to look at it, we would eliminate the electrician one, and as I said, convert an existing funded position in public facilities that has been vacant since sometime in 2019. That would take care of his need for the electrician one. HVAC technician, that would not be funded, again, because we're looking at outsourcing some of these services. And then the last one is the ADA coordinator. We would not fund that under new revised service levels. However, we would take the funds from, and I've talked to Charity about this as well, we would use the funds that's currently funded but vacant and has been vacant since I think 2017, their training position. We would simply convert that to the ADA coordinator, and that ADA coordinator would report to the assistant county manager, Garen Coleman, during, and if approved during that time, they would be certified and trained. And then once that individual's up to speed, then whoever is on board, the county manager and the assistant county manager and Dan could decide where that position should reside. And I suspect it will continue to be under the assistant county manager and possibly under Dan Callahan in public facilities. So that's what we've done. So we've reduced the budget, but we're asking for some positions to be converted that have been vacant for some time. Dan, do you have anything to add?
No, Doug, I think you covered that really well. I think that covers pretty much all of it. Just to comment on the reclassification, this is somewhat of a strategy. You know, when I joined the organization in our department, we were seeing a turnover of something like 30%. And a lot of this is due to these trades worker position, which is kind of a handyman job description. And we've been trying to recruit and retain people with more technical skill sets that have the capability to do the electrical work, the HVAC work, and some of the more technical work that we're required for our facilities. So this is something we've been working on. We've made a lot of progress on this. We did reclass some of these positions in 2020. We were able to do that. Some of those that were on the list for 2021. So those have already been converted. So these are just a few more that we want to move forward with.
Just like to say that I love the way you did this, Doug. I really do. I think this is so efficient. Also, am I missing this? Once a reclassification of these positions that weren't really utilized, this has been reclassified, and those funds that were in the budget for different positions are now applied to these other positions. What is the total? Is the total for all of this what I see on the screen of for 94,179 still for the electrician position, the technician 94,179? Is that still the same total requested, or did that change?
let me, not really. So you've got, and I'll let Dave address this with Becky and others. So the electrician at 94,179 would not be funded. However, the converted position, and I'm not sure, it's not on this sheet, so I don't know what that converted position, what the salary is at this time.
Hey, Doug, it is on there. It's
it is?
the
Okay.
reclass of the grounds worker.
Okay, all right.
It's 9,500 there.
Okay.
Where do I, I'm sorry, is it, where would I see that?
The top half of the new items page.
Can you point to it, Steve?
Up there in the middle,
Facility.
there you go.
Okay, I see. Okay, the 8826, that the total is the 9,502. That's it.
That's correct.
That's it.
Thank you. I wasn't following it, and I was just trying to get a view of what the changes were. Thank you very much.
Is that the only one we have left then for funding for the personnel side? Because if so, then all we would need is a motion from the committee to add $9,502 for funding.
So moved.
I have a move from Commissioner Cooper, second.
A second, but I got a question.
Okay, and a second for a question. Go ahead.
I know, Dan, that you were already short on groundskeeper anyway. What does this do? I mean, you were having trouble keeping up with the grounds work because of employees being out.
Yeah, the groundskeeping is one we're taking a real hard look at, and I don't want to commit to a total outsourcing of that right now, but we are looking at outsourcing some of those properties as we've bought and purchased more properties. We've only got 4 people in the grounds crew, and of those, we've had one who's been out for an extended period of time due to medical reasons. And it's difficult to keep 3 people because typically we like to have a crew of 2 for safety reasons, so that we don't like to send them out by themselves. So it has been somewhat of a challenge. So what we're looking at is outsourcing some of those properties that typically are trimming and mowing, and then retaining our existing ground crew to maintain some of our facilities like the courthouse and the ones where we need to spend a little more time on the grounds where we have a lot more landscape beds and things like that. So the one position we reclassified for the electrician position is one of the grounds crew. And that might be a area we start looking at more and more, is just moving away from that business and continuing to outsource that.
I did know that the sheriff said he wanted to talk to somebody about his program. I think it's the acronym.
Yep. Love to have his help.
Yeah, I would talk to him before you embark on something else, because it's a new program that I think they got $100,000 grant. Becky can probably tell you more about it, but it's to teach some career paths to some of these lower, crimes, and landscaping is one of the career paths they're teaching.
Yep, I'll certainly talk to him about that.
Yeah, and Commissioner Mills in Finance Committee, Dan has worked very hard to put together costs associated with the positions versus outsourcing, and that's something he'll continue to work on to determine if that's the best route to take.
We probably should talk to the sheriff, because he did indicate to me that there would be some equipment that we're going to need to purchase because of this new program.
We probably have the equipment, depending on how much is needed for what we're trying to do, but we do have the available equipment. If we're only operating 1 grounds crew, we had equipment for 2 grounds crews. So we could probably assist in that area.
Why don't you reach out to him, Dan, and try to get with him and talk to him about it?
Sure will. Thank you.
Major Patton might know about it too.
I'll reach out to Major Patton. He's usually easier to find and get a hold of.
Thank you. Thank y'all for all this effort too.
So Dave, we didn't vote on all the reclasses, did we?
No, we have not voted.
Okay.
No, there's a motion for funding for 9502. I think 3 of those have been implemented this year. So the only question I would have is do we still need to reclass of those 2 trades workers to HVAC techs? Dan, are those still in play or just the one we did for the electrician?
Yes, Dave, we would like to reclass both of those positions. These are currently people we have in those positions that are qualified HVAC techs. They have universal certifications, and we would like to get those reclassed to be more in line with the job they're doing.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Let's go ahead if we can vote on that one, and then we'll see if we have a motion for the other two. May I call for a vote on the reclass for the electrician for $9,502? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that's unanimous, 5-0, none opposed. All right, is there any, do we have any motion for any funding for the other two reclasses?
So moved as presented.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. In favor, all those in favor of funding the other two reclasses, signify by saying aye. And I see the hand.
Aye.
All in favor, it passes 5-0 with none opposed. All right, before we move on to the other funds, let me just give you a summary of where we landed in the general fund for moving this forward as a proposed budget to the full board, and we'll talk about those dates at the end of the calendar. By my calculation here, using the spreadsheet that staff set up, I think the revenues right now would exceed the proposed expenditures by just over $914,000. We'll put that, we'll double check the number and fine tune it, but we'll put that in a reserve to balance the general fund proposed budget, and then the full board can look at that accordingly. Any other comments or questions on the general fund before we move forward to the other funds?
Dave, I
Yes.
do. I don't know if this is the right time for it. And this is just for information.
Mm-hmm.
There's no action to be taken on this today. But Ruthie Brew is going to work through my office to take two positions that are part-time, I believe, and convert those into one full-time accountant. And actually the net savings is around $15,000.
Right.
But that's going to come through my office and Pat's office, and we'll handle that. Again, there's no action that's needed by the Finance Committee. But the other thing is, and because I wasn't here during these discussions earlier, when is a good time to talk about the merit versus COLA increase for 2021?
I think you certainly could talk about it now.
Okay. I'm going to lean on Pat just a little bit, but in my previous life here, we have used COLA and we have used merit increases. And typically when the merit increase is recommended, however, it's such a small amount that it's really difficult to apply that. And it's not much of an incentive when it gets down to a low percentage. So the recommendation in the past has been from my office and Pat's is to make that a COLA instead of a merit increase. And I think Pat's got some additional information on that and can shed a little better light on why that's the better way to go in this case for 2021. Pat?
Yes, Doug, thank you. Yeah, really, when you start at 2% or less, it's always more efficient to apply it as a COLA. It can almost be counterproductive in incentivizing those high performers because it's the dollar difference between those meeting expectations and those exceeding expectations. It almost comes down to lunch money, and so when I looked at also the expected COLA that Social Security is going to apply for 2021, that's at 1.1%. So we're the 2% is just a little bit above that. So that is one reason why I'd be recommending if we're going to be doing the 2%, to apply it as a COLA at this time.
So moved.
Okay. Okay. That can be your recommendation. What I was going to say is in the budget, we just set the funding up as compensation adjustments. We don't really specify COLA or merit. Now, if the committee wants to make their recommendation, they can now. The board usually decides how it's going to be applied later. But I do have a motion to make the recommendation. That's in order.
I mean, if we don't want to make a recommendation, but I mean, we're a recommending body.
Yeah, that's fine. Either way, you don't need to as far as the budget's concerned, but you certainly can make a recommendation on the COLA. that still so moved?
I second Commissioner Mills.
Second from
Second.
Doug Darer. All right, all in favor of, along with this budget, recommending a COLA for the 2% funding, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. And that passes unanimously. All right, moving on to the other funds on the agenda. We'll go to the fire fund. And the items, moving down the new items page for those. Let's see what we had there on the screen. The fire fund had 2 areas. Let me look at this. Some related to the facilities. The first 4, I think, were I'll just summarize it. $207,000 worth of. Let me back up a little bit. Part of those are for maintenance in the stations, painting and flooring, and there was 2 current matches for the Assistance to Firefighters grant, $27,000 and $4,000, and then the new service level items are where there's some positions: a health and safety officer and a fire instructor, and some part-time inspector, contracted service for medical director, and annual physicals. That's all the items that are before us, and I believe Chief is online. You want to comment on either of those? Chief Ed?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
There you go.
Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Morning. Hey, Chief.
So we'll just start down the line there. The flooring projects for stations 3, 4, and 7, those stations are getting on up in age a little bit, and they had initially had carpet put in the living quarters, in the bunk rooms, and in the offices. And we found that that doesn't work well. What we've been doing is removing the carpet, polishing and sealing the concrete, and it works out much better for us. Lower maintenance, easier to clean, decontaminate. So that's what that is. Number 2 is kind of an add-on to that. We have 6 fire stations that are 10 years old or older. It's time for a repaint on the interior. That's just a maintenance item. The number 3 and 4, the matching funds for the Assistance to Firefighter grant, those are placeholders. Those are not something that we already have. That's not grants that we currently possess. But knowing that we are going out for some more grants next year, this is the matching funds that we would need should we be awarded those grants. Any questions on those so far? Okay. So the revised service level items, excuse me. Number 1, the health and safety officer. This is a big one. In keeping with our momentum and focus on our employees, statistics show, studies after studies after studies show that half of all the firefighter fatalities occur as a result of a medical emergency. And, we just got the grant awarded to us to re-implement our physicals, and that is a big step. It's a 2-pronged approach. The other step is a comprehensive health and wellness initiative, and this individual would develop that program and initiate it and deliver that to our employees. We're taking a more proactive approach to the health and fitness aspect of what we do, and the payback on that is on the back end. There's tons of studies. All of those show that when you initiate a health and wellness program, you see those cost savings on the backside in reduced workers' comp claims, reduced occupational and injury costs, reduced morbidity, and there's some long-term cost savings from preventing cardiovascular disease, cancers, and reducing early disability from musculoskeletal and back injuries. So that's a program that once it's up and running, you'll start seeing that payback almost 2 to 1. Any questions on that one?
No, I'm very complimentary over you doing this focus on that. When you look at the mental health aspect with firefighters and public safety, I think that we would be remiss if we didn't do this.
Thank you very much. And I would like, since you brought up the mental health program that we initiated last year, that has been tremendously successful. Thank you for that.
Any research you do, I mean, public safety, mental health, it falls in line with people that serve in the military. It's very disturbing.
Okay, we're ready to move on to the next one. Item number 2, the annual physicals for our firefighters. We got the grant that started those this year. This $96,000 is what it's going to cost to carry those out year after year. Now, you'll see that go down a little bit, I think, because there's some of the services that don't get done each year, like the chest x-rays and some of the other things that get staggered to a 5-year period. But for next year, it's $96,460. This is something that we had done in the past, and for some reason or other, reasons that unbeknownst to me, we quit doing them. So we're kind of playing catch up, to be honest. But the grant that we just received from the Assistant to Firefighter grant is a great way to kickstart it, and this is just maintaining that going forward. The next item is a contracted service for a medical director. Up until now, our medical director has provided his service to us pro bono, and it's a double-edged sword. There's some cost savings there, but there's also some gaps in what we need to be doing that we can't fill. We looked around at all of our neighbors, and what they do is outsource that on a contract basis, typically to a doctor that works at the local hospital, because they're the ones that are receiving our patients in and seeing the work that we do. $35,000, that's what Cobb County's paying, and it's close to what Gwinnett County's paying, so that's what we estimated kind of the market to be right now. But for us to be able to grow our EMS service delivery and keep up with the current trends and keep up with the critical care aspect of it, we really need to do that. The other issue is, while ours is a private doctor that does it, the EMS service contracts with one at the hospital, and we do have some directives that conflict with each other. We need to clean that up to make sure that we're all delivering the same service and operating off the same sheet of music. And then the next item.
Is there no way we could do this through the wellness center?
I don't believe so, because it needs to be a doctor that specializes in emergency medicine. Everything that we do is emergency medicine based. All the protocols, and I'm sure Commissioner Cooper can chime in, all the protocols and everything that we do.
But we couldn't add it as a part of their contract to provide?
Oh, no, we may be able to do that, but it still needs to be a doctor that works at our local hospital.
Okay.
That's where the important part of it is,
Okay.
because they're the ones that see our work. We need them to be helping us develop new protocols and revise and staying up to date. And that's a little bit, we've fallen a little bit short there historically. It's worked well up to this point, but I think we're getting to the point where we're growing beyond that. And for us to stay on top of what we're doing, we need somebody dedicated and committed to us that we can go to when we need to. And that will also be helping us when we get new paramedics, doing their skills checkoffs, making sure that the quality control and quality assurance is there, which is something that we're not really where we need to be yet. The next one is a part-time fire inspector. We have an individual that works over in the fire marshal's office that has expressed his desire to slow down a little bit and not work quite as much. This would allow us to retain him while he is still wanting to work. He's a very valuable asset to us. can't really afford to downgrade his full-time position to part-time. We're already a little bit short over there, but this would allow us to keep him and keep providing the same level of service that we have been up to this time. If he does decide to go ahead and fully retire, that position would probably just go away. And the next one is the fire instructor. One of the areas that we've needed to really focus on over the last few years was our training division. And last year we put a new training chief back there dedicated solely to the training division. And he has done a phenomenal job. He's a body short. We find ourselves now almost in a perpetual recruiting phase and rookie school phase, which rookie school is 37 weeks long. Then you add 4 months worth of recruiting to that, we're at a year. I mean, a year to 14 months from the time we hire them till the time that they sit down in a fire truck for the first time. And it takes a lot of resources to manage that. And on top of that, making sure that we keep our current staff trained up to the current national standards and new trends. One more training instructor, fire instructor would do that. It gets us where we need to be, at least for the foreseeable future. Any questions on that? And that's it. That's all we have for you today, as far as revised service level items.
Any other questions or comments from the committee?
He has the budget for all of this?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, based on the summary we put together for their this is all within the fire fund, and there is sufficient funding available in the fire fund to cover these.
So moved to approve all of it.
Second.
Motion from Commissioner Brown, second from Commissioner Mills to recommend funding for these items from the fire fund. Any other comments? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Got everybody? There we go. Okay. I have to flip back and forth. Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Hey, Chief, when are y'all going to start on the land?
So we're right now in the selection process for the firm to do the master planning. I really hope to be turning some dirt by mid-year next year, hopefully.
Good to know.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
All right, next area on the agenda is E911 department, and they have several positions being requested. Let's see. They'll come up. I'll look at my copy. There's an operations manager is a new position, 2 communication officer 3s, and 4 reclasses from Commissioner 4s to Commissioners 5. Do we have Chris on? I can't tell from the outside numbers.
I am here.
Okay, there's Chris.
Committee members, thank you. As you all know, about 16 months ago, I moved over and have been over 911 and have had a chance to kind of watch the operations of 911. And these here are changes that need to be made, in my opinion. The new position for operations manager will be solely focused on supervising the 4 shift supervisors and the operations that are going on the 911 shifts. Right now, all those positions report to the deputy director of 911, as well as several other positions that report to the deputy director. So we'd like to have somebody who can really focus on our operations, making sure we're consistent across our 4 different shifts. So that would be what this person, they would focus on that. And like I said, they would supervise, they would have 4 direct reports. As far as the 2 additional communication officer positions, right now we have, if we were fully staffed, we would have 11 communication officers on 1 shift, or I'm sorry, on 2 shifts, 11 on 2, and then 10 on 2 shifts. So this is just to get us to be even across all the shifts at 11. One thing we're looking at probably doing here soon is increasing our minimum staffing. And so what this allows us to increase our total staffing on those shifts to provide a relief factor. That's something that has not always been taken into account. And so that way we can cut down on overtime that we pay. But have that built-in relief factor for our 911 shifts. And then the reclasses on here are for to create a assistant shift supervisor. So right now, the way 911 our shifts are organized is there is a shift supervisor, and then there's the communications officers. So if a supervisor has to be out, we have an informal position at this point of who would step in and be that shift supervisor. This would formalize that. It sets them apart a little bit. They would have some ongoing responsibilities, not just when the supervisor is out. They would have some ongoing responsibilities and some other, but also serve as that supervisor when they're out so that they can take care of any discipline issues that may come up or anything that really requires somebody with supervision training. And I'll be happy to take any questions.
Any other comments or questions from the committee?
I think that's a good synopsis, Chris, and good justification.
I was just hoping you'd have to say shift supervisor a few more times.
Please don't. All right, what's the pleasure of the committee? Any funding recommendations? This is all funded within the E911 fund, which does have sufficient funding in it to cover these.
So moved as presented.
I'll take a motion from Commissioner Brown, second from Commissioner Mills, although I think I heard another second back there too. Let's call the vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you, everyone. It passed unanimously 5-0. No one opposed. All right, next is the jail fund, which we could probably do fairly quickly. This is really a continuation of when the sheriff was here. The sheriff had indicated of his new positions that were needed, 2 of the jail positions he would agree to fund from the jail fund, which is at his disposal to make recommendations for funding from that separate fund. And so this is where we're bringing it forward. That would put $178,785 of funding for 2 deputy sheriff positions in the detention center in the jail fund. I don't know if anyone from the sheriff's office wants to add any comments to that, but this was really covered before when we did the sheriff's office and the general fund. So I don't know if this may be a mere formality question or motion.
No, a motion.
All right.
I move that we accept the $178,785 request from the jail fund for the jail fund.
Thank you, Commissioner Cooper. A second? I see a second from Commissioner Brown and also Mills. All right. Ready to vote? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? None. Hearing it. Passes unanimously 5-0. All right. 3 funds to go. Next one is engineering fund. And there's a few positions here being requested. 2 in, let's see, 3. Actually, there's in general engineering, there's an engineering tech. There's also 2 senior inspectors. Those would be for road projects. So those don't require any funding. They would be charged to the projects as needed. And in roads and bridges, there is 1 piece of equipment, a Super Shot 125 diesel melter. All righty. Do we have someone, John, are you on? Do we have someone from engineering?
Yeah, I'm here, Dave. Can you hear me?
Here we go. You go ahead. If you cover those items, please.
I sure will. The engineering technician will be a new position to assist our capital improvements project manager, Denise Starr, on all our road projects. The big savings there is going to be from the amount of time we have to use consultants on our projects to assist with issues with the contractors and with citizens out in the field. And some support for this position is in about a 10-month period, Denise had accumulated over 280 hours in comp time, and you know, you can only carry over 120 hours a year, and she has to use that or lose it. So we need her to get her some help because we can't afford to have her off that much, especially with all these big projects we got coming. The inspector positions, they'll be available to us if we need them. We're not sure if there's going to be a need yet, but if there is, then those positions will be available to us to hire for some of these larger projects on an as-need basis. As far as the super shop melter for roads and bridges, that is actually a replacement piece of equipment. We're replacing an old push-by-hand crack sealer, and what this is actually a trailer-mounted crack sealer that's going to help our operations be a whole lot more efficient in sealing cracks on our roads, preserving the base, and keeping the water infiltration out. So if is there any questions, just let me know.
The only comment I have is you've decreased your budget from last year by over 8%. And I would like to make a motion that we accept the extra, the budget changes as presented.
Motion is second to submit these as part of the funding for proposed budget. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, seeing none, we'll move that on to the proposed budget as recommended by the committee. Next, we have water and... Sorry? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Next, we have water and sewer. There's no position request there. It's 3 lines related to equipment and 1 vehicle. Tim Perkins, do we have you available? Or Barry to cover these?
Yeah, Dave, Barry Lucas here. I can cover
Barry.
Just 3 items. The first one is a 40-foot container and some tools, equipment that go with it. This is for our pump technicians. So we have over 50 pump stations just on the sewer side alone. So this provides them a place to store spare parts and equipment. Right now, we've really run out of space in the warehouse, and this would give them a place to move and keep all that stuff together. So that's the container. The second one is an all-terrain vehicle for $42,500. This will allow us to access our outfalls. We have over 380 miles of outfalls that are, a lot of them are in swampy areas, things like that. So this gives us a way to get out there and carry the equipment we need to inspect them and repair them and that sort of thing. So we can carry the camera on here as well as other type equipment. And then the third item is a SL RAT, which is a sewer line rapid assessment tool. So this is some new acoustic technology. We have one of these and another one. It allows us to quickly assess a sewer line. It can take a good little while to put a camera down and look at it. And as I just explained, sometimes they're hard to get to. The SL RAT's a small portable device, and within a few minutes, you can tell whether there's a blockage and then make the decision of whether to follow up with the camera or a jetter or something like that. It just makes our people a lot more efficient in what they do. I would like to say that there's a possibility we may be able to buy some of this equipment this year, like the container. We're looking at that, and so I'd like to get these on the budget, but realizing that some of them may be purchased this year and will be able to come off. Thank you.
Any comments, questions? Of course, these would all be funded within the Water and Sewer Fund, which is completely fee supported with no taxpayer funding going in that fund.
So moved as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. Passes unanimously. And then the final fund for this agenda, before we finish up with the last items in the agenda, is the fleet services. This is mainly some smaller items other than one item of any size for fleet. The one larger item is a Coney wireless lift. The others are all just small items which may be handled this year. We'll see. Avery, are you on?
Yes, sir, I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Very clear. If you want to comment maybe on the lift, and then are there any of the small items you still need funding for next year, or can you cover those this year?
There may be some that we could cover this year, Dave. I'll zero in on the Coney wire lift. These are the 4-column lifts that we use in each bay in the shop. And we've had several Coney lifts in operation for a while. The goal is for safety and efficiency rather than our guys. These things are on wheels, they can be rolled around. But our goal is to eventually have a set of these lifts in each bay to keep staff from having to move them around so much. This particular Coney lift, we just found out about them a year ago. We've got 2 already in operation. These are wireless lifts. There's not a lot of cables running along the floor, which eliminates any kind of trip hazard. These things can be chained together, so to speak, that you can lift anything from a 0-turn mower up to a large truck. So they're very useful. And fire departments have been using Coney lifts for a number of years. They have proven to be extremely reliable and very little downtime with them. And those are our biggest, as far as dollar requests, are the Coney lifts. Again, for more flexibility, safety, and we can improve production by not having to move others around. I'll touch base on the other CARP items, the smaller items where they can cover from this year's budget. The refrigerant machine for the air conditioner. This is what's called a 1, 2, 3, 4 refrigerant machine. Actually, this is what puts the Freon, if you will, in your vehicle to run the air conditioner. The EPA has mandated that the Freon now goes from an old 134A into this 1, 2, 3, 4. All these models of 2016 going forward is going to have this new refrigerant. It's much lesser damage to the environment, the EPA has determined. And we have to have this unit to install this 1, 2, 3, 4, as they call it, refrigerant. So that's a very needed to stay in compliance with EPA standards. The Coney wheel lift for $8,500. This is a unit that allows staff to put heavy truck wheels and tires and brake drums rather than trying to lift these heavy things. This wheel lift will do that for you, and it eliminates any kind of strain or safety hazards to the employees. And finally, on the Miller welder, which is $5,000, we have a new service truck coming in that's on order. The current old welder on our old service truck is almost 20 years old and is about worn out, and this is a request to put a new welder onto the new service truck as we go out on the road and make various repairs. I'll be happy to answer any questions. The lower dollar items, Dave, I think we can probably fill from this year's budget.
Okay, thank you, Avery. Any questions or input or recommendations on the wireless lift? This funding, of course, comes from what is paid into the fleet fund from the customers and the fees charged out.
So moved.
A motion from Commissioner Brown.
Second, Doug.
And a second, we'll get Doug in there for a second. Oh, did I see Commissioner Cooper's hand up first? I don't know.
She wins.
He defers to Commissioner Cooper. All right, motion and second. One more time, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Seeing the hand, thank you all. Pass unanimously 5-0.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Just
Avery.
so y'all know, Avery's voice is usually God in our church.
I can see that. All right. And on that note, back on our agenda, we'll come back in 2 items to our budget calendar where we go with the proposed budget from here. But first, we have an item on social services funding, a bit of an update, I guess. Commissioner Mills, did you want to start that off, or would you prefer I do that, or whichever?
And what? I couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry. The social services funding.
Yeah,
we put that on the agenda.
We have been talking about this, and I think we came down to the Social Service Committee having a meeting, though.
They are.
And making a recommendation back to the board. But we are discussing being able to possibly ending Social Service Committee as it is. The way it's been happening, I mean, when I got on the board, it was already existing, and it was really, it all centered around juvenile justice. And it came from the recommendations by then Judge Jackson, and Ken had it. I mean, it was all done through a resolution that Ken's office had. And I had an issue with us, the board, sort of saying what people's money did that went, with taxpayer dollars going to nonprofit. And I tried to make it a little bit more rigorous, that we did it sort of like United Way, way back when it started, that we made it where we made it a little bit more rigorous, that we went through a budget and allocation type process, that it added a little bit more of accountability to it, or I felt like it did, that they had to go through a little bit more of a process, and added another layer of accountability for it. And they at least had to come through and ask, and a budgeting process. And through that, we did weed some of different things out. And right before I got into office, we did find, or they found, some other people that there was some money not being spent correctly, or accumulation of dollars, I guess might be a better way of saying it. So that was when the process started happening, where they started invoicing some to begin with. And then when juvenile justice sort of had a change of hands, Robin and Superior Court started doing a lot more invoicing. So over the last 2 years, Dave has worked with Robin, and they started doing a lot more invoicing. And so last year, it just became more and more apparent that we were going to, juvenile court was taking a whole different approach, and they were invoicing more and more. So when Kathy came and said it was time to reappoint people, Ruth Good was the first to say, I mean, really, what are we doing on this committee if all we're doing is, we're not really budgeting or allocating, we're just invoicing? And so I got with Molly and I said, Ruth's saying, why even serve on the committee if we're just invoicing? And I got with Robin, and she's talked with the judges, and Judge Willis and Judge Bagley said they're fine with us, not doing this committee anymore. And so Ken said that if we want to, probably the cleanest way to do it is to have a social service committee meeting. Social service will then make the recommendation to the Board of Commissioners to abolish this committee. And then the board will then have to make a recommendation or vote on abolishing, since they made the recommendation to set it up to begin with. Is that right, Dave?
Very good. Yeah, and that meeting has been set since we put this agenda together. Any other questions from them? Very good. Thank you. Any other questions from the committee on this area? All right.
The request will just be made directly to the general fund, or, I mean, we'll still have these items.
Right. The way, so since they've all been now converted to a payment for services invoice basis, there's no more grants to not-for-profits. That's why we had this whole process with the committee set up with big applications and so on. We will still set the needed funding aside. All that the board would need to do is part of the budget process is how much total funding is available for those services. That's all we need to do.
So are we going to just set aside the same amount this year, or will we reduce it based on what was used this past year?
And maybe that's the one thing the committee can address when they meet next month. But I'll bring that. I'll update that and bring that forward, because I know we can already reduce what's there. And really, 3 of the organizations are coming now, going to completely out of juvenile court. So that'll just leave the other 4 with the smaller allocations, just still coming out of a what we call an part of our budget called social services. And we can talk about this. So just talking about the service, not grants to organizations. All right.
We don't really have anything to do today concerning that.
Not really. I think it probably works better being in that social services committee.
Okay.
I mean, the funding is still in the budget. We don't need to take any action right now on it.
Okay.
All right. Okay. If so, coming back to the budget, where we go from here on a potential budget adoption calendar, I think, Sandra, if you're going to bring that up on the screen, where we can go from here on the proposed budget, at least on the soonest it can happen, if the board or the committee doesn't want it to happen later. What we normally do now is we take a proposed budget, make sure it's all in good order, and put it before the full board at a work session, which at this point will be, and Sandra, if you can get that calendar up there, that would be good. But otherwise, I'll go from what I remember. To the first work session in October, I think is October 13th. We'll bring that proposed budget before the full board then. If the board is ready after that review to authorize us to advertise for that, we hold one public hearing, and then after that have an adoption. That public hearing would be the first meeting in November, which I believe is November 5th. And then the board would be ready to adopt the budget as early as November 19th. And that's pretty much where we're headed from now. Here we go. Move on up to October, November there, Sandra. There we go. So you can see there, October 13th would be the work session. We then advertise. We have to have a 2-week period to advertise for the public hearing on November 5th. And then the board would be ready to adopt the budget for next year on November 19th if they so chose. Not much room left after that. There would only be December remaining to adopt it. But I think we've got enough economic information in now to see the impact in this county of the recession so far. And I think we're fairly confident that what we have in the proposed budget will carry us for next year. I know that what I have in there for the Taft and the lost in the general fund, based on the current year's projected collections, are more than 10% ahead of what I have in the budget for next year. So we have room for that to come down, these collections, and not impact the budget as currently proposed. But certainly if we get more information by the time it goes before the full board, we'll bring that forward as well. So that's the calendar, and we have one more item in this agenda to update you on, but I want to thank the Finance Committee for all these many meetings and all the budget work this year, from when they reviewed all the departments and elected officials and through all these meetings. Done a great job on a very large budget of over, I think, 20 funds and thousands of lines, and over 1,500 personnel, 1,600 perhaps. And thank you. Any other comments on the budget process, or that's where we're headed?
I think that this committee has, I'm very proud of all the work that everybody's done. This has been a tough year.
Yeah.
This has been and I think we went about it in the right way. I think we've been, Doug, you would be proud. We have been very fiscally prudent. You would have been proud of our stale cracker approach.
He's muted, but I see his smiling face. So, Doug, we can't hear you.
I got to unmute. I know Commissioner Mills, Dave, and others on the committee are fiscal conservatives as well, and that's the way we get through sometimes. So I'm sure y'all, it looks like you did a great job getting this point, and I certainly, and I'm sure the community appreciates it.
All right, thank you. If we're ready, I have 1 minute left to give a brief summary in the last item on the agenda. There was interest in where we stand on our impact fee study, so I'll give an update. We did get a draft in from the consultants at the beginning of this month. Staff responded with some updated data. They've sent back a adjusted draft. We now have set up, from this point on, is basically meetings and then on to public hearing and adoption of the ordinance by the board to change the impact fees. We've set up an initial meeting with the senior staff, the manager's office, and the consultant for next week to see what meetings to schedule from there. Usually what's involved is what stakeholder meetings do you want to hold? Need not be necessarily the full process we went through last time, but we'll want to see at one point what the board wants to recommend as far as public meetings are concerned. And then ultimately we need to advertise, have a public hearing, go through what we do to change an ordinance, because it is an ordinance, and then get that ready for adoption by the board, depending whatever direction the board wants to go with the impact fees. So I think we're on track now. We have the study and we're ready to move forward with the rest of the process for any impact fee adjustments the board wants to consider.
Well, when you say you have the study, I'd like to have a little data and more information. That was.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that was a draft. There were some changes made to it. We're going to meet on it next week with them, and then I think we can send you the draft. And yeah, definitely before there's meetings and so on with the board.
Way before.
Yep.
Maybe you can meet with us, and give us. This is a big deal.
Yep.
And this could be changing our relationship. Well, not a relationship, but this is changing some of the expectations for the commercial development and the commercial developers. So I want us to make sure that we know what we're doing. We're very familiar with it. And Dave, as you know, this was asked for back in January. It's almost been a year in the making.
Mm-hmm.
It's been months and months and months, as well as thousands of dollars.
Right.
So yeah, the board really needs to see that study way before we're to be voting on it.
Sure. No, we'll get that to you as soon as we can. It's probably about ready. I think I've gone through it again. It looks like everything's in order. And again, we'll meet with the consultant next week to make sure we got everything in order.
Maybe you could even send us a copy of what you've got, because we may have some questions for you to ask the consultant. That
Yeah, I don't see. Okay. We can do that. Maybe make a note.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments or questions?
Let's just be positive that those numbers are right before we let it go out to the public.
That's why we need to be checking that early, Sandy. You're right. Absolutely.
But the last time we let those go out about roads, and then they were not right. And I mean, I know I personally got slaughtered when we tried to go back and change them and got accused that we were lowering them for developers. And it wasn't lowering them for developers. They just weren't right.
Okay. Well, this is a different consultant, and it's a very technical study you will see. And there is some judgment there on how those formulas and numbers are applied. So that's why we'll get it distributed to everyone. You can see it.
Will you get that out to us today, Dave?
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. I'll send it to the whole board, and I think
Absolutely.
Doug and Tim already have it, I think. All right. Anything else for the good of the committee? We've managed to use up our 2 hours. Anyone interested in adjournment or lunch or both?
No move.
All right, I see that motion in a second. All in favor of going to lunch, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Thank you for all your work and all of this in this agenda again today. All right.
Thank y'all very much. Appreciate it, Dave.
Thank you.
And back to staff.
And that ends the meeting, Andrew.